Number 1.
Britney Tiger had a heart of gold, according to her sister Jessica Tyson. Jessica told us that, as a mother, sister, daughter, aunt and friend, Britney always wore a smile and forever lent a helping hand. At 26 years old, Britney was the youngest of 3 sisters living in Ada, Oklahoma. Jessica, the oldest of the trio, told us that her baby sister Britney was a firecracker, but kind, genuine and gorgeous, even on the inside. In 2017, Britney's days were dedicated to taking care of her 3 young children, Jalen, 9, Christian, 7, and Samia, 4, and spending time with loved ones. In September of that year, the family grew by 1 when Britney married Will Gomez. The pair was inseparable, according to Britney's sister. Britney and the kids moved into Will's house, and the newly formed family of 5 lived together in what friends described as a happy home. But just 5 months into the marriage, something inexplicable happened. On February 11, 2018, the children were staying with their biological fathers. Will would later tell police that he and Britney took the opportunity to go to bed early and get a good night's sleep. But at 3:30 a.m., when Will stirred in his sleep, he found the space bedside him empty. Britney was nowhere to be found. After not hearing from Britney in a little over a week, Britney's family grew concerned. Britney's sister Jessica and their mother, Bernadine, live only a half-mile away from Britney's house, and, according to Jessica, Britney never went far without telling her mother. On February 19, 2018, Britney's half-sister Christina Lewis reported Britney missing to the Ada Police Department. Ada police officers promptly went to the Gomez home to conduct a welfare check. Ada Police Department Detective Brian Engel told us that Britney's husband Will was there, and they took his statement at the house. According to police, Will said Britney must have left when he was sleeping, taking a couple of hoodies and a bag of makeup with her. At the time, police believed that Britney left willingly on foot, as neither she nor her husband owned a car. But Britney's family maintains she would never have abandoned her children of her own accord. They grew frustrated as the days and weeks went by with no sign of Britney. The weeks of waiting and trying to look for her, and hoping she'd been found, were awful and long, Jessica said. Jessica told us she remembers the days after Britney disappeared as something you think to see on TV or a bad movie. According to the Ada Police Department and Jessica, Britney's husband Will didn't seem to share the same desperation to find Britney. Authorities told us that Will said he wasn't worried that Britney was missing because, he told them, Britney commonly left for weeks at a time. For that reason, Will told investigators, when Britney disappeared, he carried on with his own routine and even felt comfortable leaving the city for a period of time. Britney's sister Jessica disputes Will's claim that Britney often left for weeks at a time without telling anyone. The Ada Police Department received information that Gomez traveled to the Shawnee, Oklahoma area after Britney was missing, allegedly to visit his father who lives in that area, to do some work there with him, Det. Engel told us. Will claimed to be mad at her for leaving unannounced, Jessica said. So he went and worked in Oklahoma City. Neither Jessica nor the Ada Police Department knows what kind of work Will was allegedly doing there. Will Gomez did not respond to our request for comment on this report. She never went anywhere without Will, Jessica told us. He was always right by her side. That's why we found it strange that when she first went missing, he didn't ever ask to see if she was at our house. Family, friends and authorities continued to search for Britney. And then, on March 16, 2018, about a month after Britney disappeared, a local cattleman came upon Britney's body in a wooded area by Cullahoma Indian Stomp Grounds, 15 miles from Britney's house. She came home, Jessica told us. Just not the way we wanted her to. It hurts to think my sister, whom I loved all her life, was in such an area and in such a way. It was cold and rainy a lot during that time. An autopsy report released later that month states that the cause and manner of Britney's death is unknown. The report also details how Britney was found lying on her back with her hands above her head. The body was already in a state of decomposition, according to the autopsy report. Initially, Ada Police Detective Brian Engel told local media that the case would be treated as a homicide. Given the circumstances and that she was found deceased out in a wooded area, we're treating the investigation as a homicide at this time, the detective said in March of 2018. Now, almost a year later, Engel told us there is no current evidence that a crime has been committed and the case has not officially been classified as a homicide. Jessica says she and her family held a closed casket ceremony soon after Britney's body was recovered. According to Jessica, the family feels grateful for the closure brought by bringing Britney home, but they continue to fight for justice. My sister's case is still ongoing. We haven't found answers. And every time we think we are on the right road to something, it's another dead end. We want the truth, Jessica said. Ada Police Department detectives told us they continue to interview people in connection with Britney's case. Information is being followed up on as it is being made available, Det. Engel told us. The Ada Police Department continues to gather information in reference to Britney and follow up on it as it comes to light. If you have any information on the circumstances surrounding Britney's death, please call the Ada Police Department at 580-332-4466.
Number 2.
The mysterious disappearance of Margie Phillips has raised eyebrows for years. The case has garnered heavy speculation as to whether or not the 30-year-old was murdered, but what is known is she was last seen with her boyfriend, Willie Lee Battles, on April 22, 1976. The 31-year-old, some reports list her as 30, and others state 41, was with Battles when they traveled to the First Federal Saving and Loan Office in the downtown area of Fort Myers, Florida. There wasn't anything out of the ordinary about the trip, but according to Battles, Margie simply disappeared. The couple reportedly lived together at the time and Margie Phillips went to the bank in order to get money to purchase a new vehicle. Battles claimed that, while Margie was inside of the bank, he dozed off as he waited in the car. When he awoke, the bank was closed and Margie was nowhere to be seen. Yet, bank employees reportedly told authorities that the mother of 4 never came inside. Additionally, records showed that Margie's account hadn't even been accessed on the day she was last seen. She's described as a hard-working woman who was dedicated to her family and wouldn't leave without letting them know where she went and if she was safe. Although it'd been 43 years, I never will forget that day, said Jenethel McGee, the victim's sister, back in 2019. It's just like it was yesterday. She added, every time that phone rang, I ran to that phone just knowing it was going to be her saying, I'm coming home. Unsurprisingly, Margie's boyfriend was someone investigators were interested in speaking with, especially after witnesses came forward to say they saw the couple driving together on US 41 highway. Willie Lee Battles was repeatedly questioned by investigators for decades, but he was never specifically named as a suspect in Margie's missing person case. There just wasn't enough evidence to tie him to any crime. However, it is stated that police believe that Battles murdered his girlfriend. Authorities questioned Battles several times in the decades after Margie's disappearance. He stated he dropped Phillips off at the bank that day and never saw her again, but other witnesses reported seeing the couple driving north on US 41. Investigators believe Battles murdered her, but there is insufficient evidence to charge him in her case. At the time of her disappearance, Margie Phillips stood 5 feet 3 inches tall and weighed 130 pounds. She had black dark brown hair and brown eyes. In some reports, her missing year is listed as 1986. Anyone with information about this case is urged to contact the Fort Myers Police Department at 239-321-7700 or Crime Stoppers at 800-780-TIPS. The agency case number is 86 to 26470. Please share this story about Margie Battles to help reignite the investigation into her case. She is our sister and her life matters.
Number 3.
Less people are committing crimes across the state of Florida. According to the latest data from the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, this is the 50th consecutive year the Sunshine State has seen a downward trend in crime. Action News Jack's Courtney Cole took a closer look at the local numbers and discovered Duval County is significantly different than some of our other counties in one category: murder. Cole and the Action News Jack's team did the math and learned Duval County has more murders per 100,000 people than any other large county in Florida. It's taking a toll on communities throughout Jacksonville. Cole spoke to Melissa Jackson, a local mother whose son would have been 21 years old on Father's Day this year. Corbin Johnson went missing in 2018, and his body was found exactly 1 year later. I can say it's been good days and bad days, especially leading up to his birthday. It was rough planning his birthday, Jackson told Action News Jack's Courtney Cole. Cole first brought you this story in July 2018, when Jackson said he went missing. CJ was very shy, Jackson laughed as she thought fondly of her baby boy and continued to describe him to Cole. He was spoiled, the baby, my baby boy of 3 sons. Very loving, very funny. JSO found his skeletal remains in July 2019 off Utsey Road. The only thing that I had of him was his remains. It was the only thing that was left of him, was his bones in his shoes. It is a hard thing for any mother to endure, Jackson said. Action News Jax looked at every Florida county that has a population of at least 100,000. We found there's roughly 14 murders per every 100,000 people in Duval County. The next closest county was Escambia, that's where Pensacola is located. Its murder rate was around 10 murders for every 100,000 people. Next was Leon County, which includes Tallahassee. It ranked just slightly lower than 10 murders per every 100,000 people. Jackson said she's grateful to have a support system that really helped make coping easier. My relationship with God is the only thing that makes me get up in the morning. He gives me the strength to get up in the morning, Jackson said. Jackson also told Cole her church, Impact Church, has played a vital and supportive role in her journey. Unfortunately, Jackson's pain has become all too commonplace for many others in Duval County. According to the latest data from the FDLE Annual Uniform Crime Report, the number of murders committed are up in Duval County from 131 in 2019 to 143 in 2020. Right now, we're about halfway through 2021, and there are 51 murders in Duval, according to the JSO transparency page. They haven't arrested anyone. They have had several leads, and I can say that they have definitely kept in contact with me. The detectives that are on CJ's case, they are awesome, Jackson said. Cole reached out to JSO to see if they'd be open to talking about what they are doing day to day to try and keep crime numbers down, but she's still waiting to hear back. Just my baby, 6 my heartstring. He had my heartstrings, said Jackson. Ms. Jackson has created a non-profit called Mother Mary's to help provide support and a safe space for other mothers who have lost their sons. Mary stands for Mothers Are Raising Your Sons.
Number 4.
Jeannie Quinn from Levelland, Texas, is one of them. The episode explores her disappearance and murder aided by the accounts of law enforcement, family, and others involved with the case. If you're curious to know what happened to her, we've got you covered. How did Jeannie Quinn die? Jeannie Quinn was described as a sweet and shy girl, and according to her uncle, John, the 20-year-old was very creative. She showed a special interest in painting and loved taking pictures. He also stated that she had been working as an animal groomer part-time. But sadly, the young girl's life was cut short in 2018. Jeannie was reported missing on April 15 by family members, and only 2 days later, she was found dead. A passerby found her body in a field in Abilene, Texas, sometime in the evening of April 17. The initial conclusion was that her death was suspicious. Jeannie was found with a hard wire twisted around her neck and had white bags tied around her hands, in what the authorities called a staged hanging. The cause of death was asphyxiation. It was stated that the last person to have been with her was her boyfriend, and the investigation was directed his way. Who killed Jeannie Quinn? The boyfriend's identity was revealed to be Ricky Don Henderson. When the police spoke to the 56-year-old, he told them that he and Jeannie left Levelland on April 14 to visit friends in Brady and then stayed in Brownwood, Texas. Ricky stated that Jeannie got into an argument with him in Abilene while they were in the car, at which point she dropped him at the side of the road and took off in his truck. Ricky claimed that he didn't hear from her after that, even after calling her multiple times. He then called a friend of his to pick him up. He let the police search his phone to confirm his story. At this point, the police hadn't made any arrests or named any suspects, but in a few months, Ricky would be named a person of interest in Jeannie's murder. Investigation into Ricky's background revealed that he had a record. Furthermore, he was also the person of interest in the disappearance of his wife, Stefan, in 1993. At the time, Stefan went missing after having an argument with Ricky. She had called her grandmother and told her that she was going to leave, but when the grandmother came to pick Stefan up, she wasn't home. Ricky stated that his wife had gone to live with her friends in Hobbs, New Mexico, which later turned out to be false. Stefan's body was never recovered, and Ricky at the time was not charged. Where is Ricky Don Henderson now? Ricky had now become the person of interest in 2 cases more than 20 years apart. Eventually, Ricky was convicted of possession of tetrahydrocannabinol and possession of methamphetamine, in addition to the delivery of a controlled substance to a minor. He took a plea deal and was sentenced to 25 years in prison, along with another 20-year sentence for charges in Hockley County, Texas. His previous record also includes burglary of a motor vehicle in 1986 and possession of certain chemicals with intent to manufacture a controlled substance in 2007. While Ricky has been imprisoned, he has never been charged with the murder of Jeannie. The police, though, maintained that he was still the sole person of interest in that case. Moreover, Ricky was indicted for the murder of Stefan in 1993 and entered a plea of not guilty on that count. As per prison records, he is incarcerated at the Preston E. Smith Unit in La Mesa, Texas. He will be eligible for parole in June 2022.
Number 5.
Kelsey Quayle, 28, was fatally shot while driving to work in Clayton County, Georgia on October 8, 2018. Kelsey was an aspiring model, and she was heading towards her job in Riverdale at the time she was shot. After becoming disoriented from her injury, Kelsey began driving her car on the wrong side of the road into oncoming traffic. She crashed into 3 other cars and was transported to a nearby hospital. Paramedics initially thought that Kelsey was suffering from injuries from the car accident. However, when she finally made it to the hospital, it was discovered that she had a bullet wound in the back of her neck as well. Kelsey unfortunately passed away at the hospital shortly thereafter. Both Kelsey's loved ones and investigators are absolutely baffled by her death. Investigators were initially unsure if Kelsey was targeted, a victim of road rage, or if she was simply just caught in a crossfire. Surveillance footage from a nearby gas station revealed that Kelsey did make a stop there before she was shot. Investigators are asking anybody who saw Kelsey at the gas station that day to come forward. A few weeks after Kelsey's death, police released surveillance footage, which can be viewed in full here, of a young man who is now considered to be a person of interest in Kelsey's case. The video is taken from surveillance cameras on a local bus, and the man is seen approaching the bus and knocking on the door, but he eventually walks away after the driver does not open the door for him. The police are saying that this man got into an altercation outside of his car shortly before the shooting occurred. If you recognize this man or have any other information about Kelsey's death, please contact the authorities. Additionally, if you have any other information that could lead to Kelsey's case being solved, please contact Crime Stoppers Greater Atlanta at 404 to 577 tips.
Number 6.
Wednesday, January 27, 1993. We are in the town known as La Romana, which lies in the foothills of eastern Spain. The town itself is relatively small. The population has lingered at just around 2,000 for the past few decades. The area surrounding the town is pretty desolate, just small pockets of communities that string everything together via dark, winding roads through the Spanish countryside. Inside La Romana, everything looks just like a regular suburban town. But outside of the city itself, you might as well be living in the outback. The horizon is made up of many grassy knolls and foothills, which serve as a great addition to the area's very temperate climate. Gabriel Aquino Gonzalez is a retired farmer who is approaching 70 years old. In his retirement, he has taken up a number of hobbies, one of which is beekeeping. Gabriel kept his beehives nearby property belonging to one of his children's father-in-law. This in-law, a man by the name of Jose Sala, was roughly 15 years younger than Gabriel, but the two apparently got along well. The two men parked their car at the end of a road. It was roughly 10 o'clock in the morning, so they wanted to let the sun warm up a bit before approaching the hives, which were located nearby the ruins of an old, abandoned house. Since they had some time to kill, Jose Sala decided to sit for a moment and smoke a cigarette. The older Gabriel wanted to stretch his legs a little bit, so he went for a walk in the surrounding area. For about 20 minutes, Gabriel Aquino Gonzalez patrolled the nearby area, going around the two abandoned buildings that had once been homes. This is when something shiny catches the corner of his eye. Gabriel screamed out and began making his way back to the younger Jose, who met him halfway. He loosely described something that didn't look right. Cautiously, the two men approached what it was that had freaked out the 69-year-old man. What they found were a loose collection of branches and loose shrubs, which had been gathered and roughly thrown over a trench of some kind. Someone had clearly dug a hole and used tree limbs and anything they could yank out of the ground to cover it up. Jose Sala just so happened to have an old spatula with him, which he had planned on using with the beehives. With this spatula, he poked at the bramble a bit, pulling back some of the twigs to see what was hiding underneath. He found the reflective item that had originally caught Gabriel's eye. It was a watch. A large one, in fact. However, Jose also discovered that the watch was not alone. It was still being worn by the person who had been wearing it 2 months beforehand, roughly the time when 3 teenage girls had gone missing from not too far away, in a small town called Alcasser. What Jose Sala and Gabriel Aquino Gonzalez unearthed that day in La Romana would not only bring about a murder mystery for the ages. It was a story that would shock Spain to the core and change the way an entire country approached similar cases. It is a story that has become fraught with conspiracy theories, rumors of police and political corruption, and endless amounts of speculation. This is the story of the Alcasser Girls. Alcasser is a small town in the Spanish province of Valencia, with a population of just over 7,000. It sits about 15 kilometers southwest of the city of Valencia itself, a small town among dozens that speckle the grassy Spanish countryside. Several of these small towns are separated by just a kilometer or two, making them easy walks during the daytime. Alcasser is very close to the eastern Spanish coast, just a 20-minute drive or so away. The area has a very long history that dates back beyond the Middle Ages. Ruins from Roman times have been discovered in nearby areas, and the evidence shows that perhaps even the ancient Germanic people once settled the area. However, in written history, the land has passed between Muslim and Christian rule over the centuries. Up until this point in the early 1990s, the municipality of Alcasser wasn't very renowned for anything at all. It was simply a small town in a storied area with scenic land surrounding it that made it prime real estate for hikers. Antonia Gomez Rodriguez was born in Valencia, Spain on May 25, 1977. According to the records, she was the youngest of 4 children, and she was named after her grandmother. Growing up, she shared a room with her sister, Luisa, and was always close with her older brother, Fernando, with whom she often confided in. He also messed around with her, occasionally calling her Antonia. You see, she wanted to go by her nickname of Tony, and any mention of her full name drove her crazy. Tony was a very timid girl. Not in a bad way, but her friends and family always recall her as being very nervous, as if a strong gust of wind could scare her. However, she was also a very kind and compassionate girl. Her mother recalls a time when Tony had arrived home with a kitten that she had found on the streets, and she consented to let the pet live with them. Tony cared for the animal like it was her own child. At this point in 1992, Tony was apparently done with schoolwork and had stopped studying. She was simply waiting to turn 16 so that she could begin working and making money, which she was planning to spend on clothes. Tony was always very conscientious towards the people she cared for, including her parents. She was constantly calling home on the weekends when she knew she wouldn't be home on time, which stands at a clear contrast with the events that would later unfold. Maria Desita Hernandez Folch, most commonly referred to as Desiree, was born almost a year after Tony, in February of 1978. She only had one sibling, an older sister named Rosanna. Growing up, Desiree became focused in on athletics, where she excelled. No matter the time of year, she was probably involved in some type of competition sport, where she was often coming in first or second. When she wasn't competing for a medal or trophy, she was often skating around town. That was her favorite pastime by far, just skating around the area of Alcasser, talking to people and showing off her extremely personable people skills. However, Desiree was not the most rigorous student. In 1992, she was 14 years old and in the middle of repeating the 8th grade. People close to Desiree recall her as being very headstrong, with a defined personality that was fun-loving while also being stubborn, a reflection of her young age. Miriam Garcia Iborra was born on July 28, 1978, just a few months after Desiree. Unlike the 2 other girls, she was the oldest child, with 2 younger brothers. These 2 younger brothers went to same school as Desiree. Growing up, Miriam became known for her beauty. She had light brown hair and blue eyes, which caught the eye of many boys in her class. Miriam spent a lot of her free time focused on ballet, which was her greatest passion up to this point in 1992. At this point in time, Miriam was attending the nearby La Florida Institute, which was in the nearby town of Cattarauha. This just meant that, unlike Tony, Miriam was planning to continue her education. However, since she had just started at the school, she hadn't had time to make many friends, so she often spent her weekends with her hometown friends from Alcasser. Like Tony, Miriam was often shy and reserved, with a sensitivity that made her a fan of poetry, which she read as much as she wrote. She often shared her own poems with her friends, who recalled snippets months later. These three girls, who were all born in Valencia and grew up in the small town of Alcasser, would become friends. Despite the slight age gap, with Tony being about a year older than the other two, the girls would grow close. They also had another friend, a girl named Esther Diaz Martinez. In November of 1992, Esther starting to come down with a bug that kept her from hanging out with the other girls and going anywhere. Whatever she had come down with, likely the flu, seemed to be going around because it was the same sickness that Miriam's father, Fernando Garcia, had contracted. On November 12, 1992, 15-year-old Tony called into a local 107.7 radio station and dedicated a song to her group of friends, which included Esther, Miriam, and Desiree. The song was Major Tom, not the David Bowie version, but the Peter Schilling song. Even though the call is in Spanish, I'll just go ahead and play it for you so that you can hear it. In this call, the radio host, who went by the name Monfy, asks Tony what she's going to be up to over the weekend. She basically says she doesn't know, but that she's not going to stay home. Tony's family would go on to cherish this audio recording over the next few decades because her and her friends would go missing just a day later. And her comments about the upcoming weekend would go on to haunt an entire nation for years. It was Friday the 13th, in November of 1992, that the three friends, Tony, Desiree, and Miriam, would go missing. Desiree and Miriam had been at school throughout the day, while the older Tony apparently spent the afternoon with their other friend, Esther. At some point, Miriam came home from school, which got out at roughly 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and was seen by her parents. Her father, Fernando, was homesick with the flu and confined to bed. Eventually, all of the friends met up at Esther's home. As I said earlier, she was sick with a kind of bug, so she wasn't able to really hit the town with them. But on a Friday night like this, they were planning to head to a party in a neighboring town. More specifically, to a nightclub called Cooler, where classmates of the girls were throwing a party. It was a fundraiser effort to raise funds for an end-of-the-year class trip. This nightclub, which has been referred to as a discotheque in all of the news articles about the case, is in a neighboring town called Picassent. Picassent is literally across the freeway from Alcasser. The two cities are neighboring municipalities of Valencia, and to get from the middle of Alcasser to the middle of Picassent would be just a few kilometers, equaling a few minutes of driving, or roughly half an hour of walking. By all indications, the three girls were setting out to visit the Cooler nightclub. However, this has been stated after the fact. Because, sadly, we don't know what the girls' true intentions were on this Friday evening. They set out from their friend Esther's home at roughly 8 o'clock that evening and were seen by multiple eyewitnesses on their way to the Cooler nightclub, but they would never arrive at there. More interestingly, the girls had neither money to spend at the club nor pre-purchased tickets to enter. After all, these were teenage girls that had not entered the workforce. To get money, they needed to ask their parents for the money, which none of them did. However, over the next few years, the working theory would be that the girls were trying to get from their hometown of Alcasser to the neighboring community of Picassent to head to a club. And despite being seen less than a block away from the club, they never made it to their apparent destination. Several eyewitnesses saw the three girls on the evening that they disappeared, although the timeline is a bit scattered. As I said beforehand, the three girls had been at the home of their friend, Esther, in the afternoon and late evening. She recalled them leaving her house at around 8 o'clock in the evening, which would put them close to the edge of Alcasser at that time. Esther's home was located at the southwestern edge of Alcasser, which is one of the closest points to the neighboring town, Picassent. This is where the girls were headed. Apparently, the girls were spotted by an acquaintance of theirs earlier in the evening, close to the time that they left Esther's house. This acquaintance was a teenage boy who knew the girls in a somewhat familiar way. He was likely a classmate of theirs, but he knew the girls and talked to them briefly. His name was Francisco Antonio Soria. Early in the evening, he was apparently on his way to a graduation exam, which I found odd. I'm not aware of many places that arrange for major tests to take place on a Friday evening, but maybe this is just an odd translation or a cultural difference I'm unaware of. While on his way to the exam, he came across the girls. This put them closer to the center of Alcasser, but since this was earlier in the evening, it most likely explained by the three girls being on their way to Esther's home. However, in his brief discussion with the girls, he asked if they were headed to the party at the Cooler Club that evening. According to his later testimony, they said no. This would stand at a clear contrast with the later official statement. While I understand that it could be explained by them brushing him off or lying to him, I just find it odd. So, apparently after this encounter, the girls made their way to their friend Esther's home and stayed for somewhere between half an hour and 45 minutes. However, this is where the timeline starts to get very choppy. At around 8:15 that evening, which was around the time Esther estimated her friends leaving, another acquaintance of theirs recalled seeing them sitting on the sidewalk a couple of blocks away. This acquaintance was an older boy named Francisco Jose Hervas, who was driving by with his girlfriend, Maria Luz Lopez Garcia. Francisco wasn't friends with the girls, but was friendly with them and offered to take them to wherever they were headed. The three girls, who seemed to be hitchhiking, told Francisco that they were heading to the Cooler nightclub. Francisco, whose car had a leak in the fuel tank, dropped the girls off down the street from the club at an auto repair shop he was heading to. However, it's worth noting that, when I say down the street, that they were still a bit of a walk away from the club. The mechanic that Francisco stopped at was on the eastern edge of Picassent, while the nightclub that the girls were heading to was on the western edge. Picassent is not a large town, so this would be a short walk, but it was still a few blocks away. Another eyewitness would see the girls walking down the main road that ran through Picassent, which would have taken them to the nightclub. The most startling eyewitness testimony came from a completely unrelated source who came forward just a few days after the girls were reported missing. Maria Dolores Badal Soria was a 63-year-old woman who saw the three girls walking by her home in Picassent. She estimated the time to be roughly 8 o'clock in the evening, which, again, provides a cluttered timeline for when the girls had traveled. This older woman recalls seeing the girls get into a small four-door white sedan, even though they were just minutes away from their destination, the Cooler nightclub. And, according to this eyewitness, there were already a few men inside the white sedan. She recalls at least 3 or 4 men inside the car, which proposes a truly unanswered question: how many people can you fit inside a small car? According to this testimony, 7 people sped off in a white sedan, whose make and model Maria Dolores Badal couldn't recognize. This would be the last time that the girls were ever seen alive. The mystery had begun. When the girls didn't return home that evening, each of their parents became concerned. These parents, who were familiar with one another through the girls' friendships and small-town nature of Alcasser, met up the next day. That evening, at roughly 9:30 p.m. on November 14th, the parents went into their local civil guard post, located in Picassent. Ironically, this civil guard barracks is located just down the block from where the girls were last seen, in Picassent. The civil guard is Spain's version of a nationwide police force. They reported the girls as missing But the searches conducted in earnest wouldn't begin until a few days later. By Monday morning, the 16th of November, the three girls had still not returned home. Their parents collectively knew that this was no accident. The girls would not have just run off together, especially considering they had no money or resources to make it very far. From the start, the viewpoint was that the girls had been kidnapped. Over the next week or so, as November began to wind to a close, police interviewed friends and relatives of the three girls, hoping for a clue that could point to their whereabouts. This is when the Civil Guard collected almost all of the witness statements, including Maria Dolores Batel's testimony that the three girls had gotten into a white sedan with a handful of men. During this time period, the Civil Guard also discovered that the three girls had not even made it to their destination, the Cooler nightclub. Somewhere along the dark road that ran through Picassent, the girls had gone missing. Miriam's father, Antonio Garcia, would become the most public face of the investigation. A hard-working, heartbroken father, he began appearing on any radio or television show that would bring some publicity for the case. Just days after the disappearance of the three girls, he appeared on the television program Who Knows Where, hosted by Paco Lobaton. With him was the friend of the three girls, who had been with them a short time before their disappearance, Esther Diaz Martinez. The Civil Guard began utilizing their usual tricks, hitting up any local offenders who had been recently released from the jail in Picassent. When this turned up with nothing, they expanded their search to include anyone in the surrounding area that had an applicable police record. Again, nothing. After just a couple of weeks, the local area was alight with a desire to find the three girls. The City Council of Alcasser printed off thousands of flyers to distribute, which contained pictures of Tony, Desiree, and Miriam. Despite receiving tips from all corners of the country over the next few weeks, and even expanding their search into the nearby areas of Granada and Pamplona, the Civil Guard were no closer to finding the three girls. In December of 1992, the search for the three girls continued to expand in size and scope. The Interior Minister of Spain, José Luis Corcuera, began to become personally interested in the case, which was beginning to be covered throughout national media outlets. Under his supervision, a task force was set up as a joint effort between the Civil Guard and the National Police, which is an organization I liken to the FBI. This task force, referred to as the UCO, was known as the Unit of Central Operations. It would be centered in Valencia, the largest town nearby both Alcasser and Picassent. The case managed to make its way all the way up to the president of the Spanish government, Felipe González. On Christmas Eve of 1992, he received the families of the three missing girls and heard their pleas, promising to attribute more forces to the search in the hopes of a quick resolution. The search expanded to neighboring nations, even neighboring continents. The case was forwarded to Interpol, who began to add nearby European and African countries to potential places of interest. That Christmas Eve also marked another relevant episode of Who Knows Where, which contained interviews with the girls' family members in their homes. Miriam's 8-year-old brother, Martin, delivered a heartfelt handwritten plea to anyone that might know the whereabouts of his older sister. At this point, Miriam's father, Fernando Garcia, had quit his job and was pursuing answers regarding his daughter full-time. Over the next month, he was planning to visit multiple news agencies in countries all over Europe, including the BBC and Sky News. So we have no idea how to clarify how they were found, whether they were discovered underneath the bodies, on top, etc. These items were assorted afterwards and photographed together, with several of them not even being collected as evidence. A few pieces were just left behind at the scene. However, police would use one individual item from that crime scene to be the linchpin of their upcoming investigation. One item, with an unknown origin, that may have been discovered either within the pit or simply nearby. Police testified to the latter, but with no photographic evidence to support the claim, and the clear incompetence on the part of the first responders, this has become challenged by the media in the decades since. However, one thing was for sure: the discovery of the three bodies, those of Tony Gomez Rodriguez, Desiree Hernandez Folch, and Miriam Garcia Iborra, would change the country of Spain forever.
Number 7.
On Monday, December 31, 2018 at about 5:36 p.m., Austin 911 received a call of a body found in the woods along the 7000 block of Ed Bluestein Boulevard in Austin, Texas. A bicyclist and his friend were in the area when the friend said, "There's a body over there." "Are you sure that it's a body?" "Because I'm going to call the police," the bicyclist told his friend. "Wait for me. Maybe I saw wrong, and it's bags of sand," his friend said. The friend walked down the hill near the sidewalk and into the wooded area. He went down, a lot farther down, and came running, saying, "Yes, it's a body." The two went to the nearest gas station and, with the help of two patrons, called 911. Austin police, fire, and EMS arrived on scene shortly after. The body was that of a young adult female. She was nude and showed obvious signs of trauma. Dr. Mark Escott officially pronounced the woman deceased at 5:49 p.m. Homicide investigators arrived on scene and spoke with witnesses. They are not releasing cause of death or if the victim was sexually assaulted. The Travis County medical examiner ruled the death a homicide. A few days later, police identified the body as Nicole Diane Coleman, 23. Authorities released surveillance video from the Cool Corner gas station showing the last movements of Nicole Coleman on Friday, December 28, 2018. Nicole Coleman had moved to Austin from Katy, Texas 2 months before her murder, but she was originally from Austin. She resided in a facility near the Cool Corner gas station, a place she enjoyed frequenting. Nicole had a history of mental illness dating back to when she was a teenager and was receiving medical treatment at Austin area hospitals prior to her death. Police initially thought Nicole's murder was tied to an aggravated sexual assault that occurred just days before her murder. David Green, 58, and Kyle Konoski, 18, have both been charged with aggravated sexual assault in connection with the attack reported at Davis White Northeast Neighborhood Park off Loyola Lane on December 21, according to arrest affidavits filed against them. Huber 2019. Investigators ruled the two men out as suspects in Nicole's murder. Anyone with information regarding the murder of Nicole Coleman or her whereabouts prior to her death is urged to contact police. Tips can be submitted by calling 512-477-3588, via email at homicide.apd@austintexas.gov, or through Crime Stoppers at 512-472-8477. You can also text TIP 103 with information to crimes or using the Crime Stoppers app. I think this was a moment of opportunity murder. Nicole Coleman was in the wrong place at the wrong time, Cool Corner. If you watch the surveillance video in the first part, Nicole is just walking through the parking lot, heading west. She does not go near the entrance. There is a porta potty on the west side, so maybe she used it. There also appears to be a surveillance camera on the gas station covering the west side, so where is this video? Later, it looks like she is walking from the black sedan into the gas station. That's just my thought, not sure if she actually was. It just looks that way. However, there is a bus stop on Manor Road in front of the gas station. In the first part of the video, it's still daylight and the timestamp says 17:26. Then later when she walks towards the entrance, it says 18:07, and it's now dark outside. So, where was Nicole Coleman between 17:26, 5:26 p.m., and 18:07, 6:07 p.m.? Did she ride the bus somewhere? If so, where? Why are we not seeing surveillance video of Nicole Coleman walking out of Cool Corner? We see her walk into it at 18:07 and 13 seconds, but there's no video of her leaving. Surely, police have that. I hope her killer is found and justice served.